So what makes one service center digital? There are three things: process, data, and tools. Process involves teamwork, setting up roles, so we know who is doing what, including internal and external stakeholders. Data involves some structures, some interconnections. Data involves data sources, data volume, some of the restrictions, such as those related to GDPR, how we're using the data. And finally, there are tools like desktop tools, network tools, online cloud-based tools, role-based automatization, and others. On the right-hand side, you can see the graph of one very simple process of service provision. And this is already kind of formal description, because we are using some of the stereotypes, meaning those smiling faces are some roles, then those vertical lines symbolize the scope of the work of the particular roles, and those arrows are related to how the information goes from one point to another. The process goes like this. Researcher requests services, admin staff collects data that formally describe the request, then consult the external stakeholder, which in turn collects data and advises the admin staff, who then prepares the response and delivers it. And then researchers provide the feedback. This feedback is somehow noted, stored in the database, and finally admin staff reports to manager not about the individual service, but rather on a monthly basis or at some other period of time. So this is a way to visualize the process, and when you visualize it for the purpose of describing it, you use some of the stereotype with a grid meaning. Graphical objects that you use to describe certain concepts in the domain. You know what? When you look at this, neither process and data are not necessarily bound to IT. Processing data is something that you can do with pencil and a whiteboard. You don't have to use the IT tools. And if you do those two, process and data, you're already on some 80% progress towards the digitalization. So if you make a decision related to how you're going to implement the process, if you make a decision on what kind of data you will be collecting, you're already in a very good place, even without a single IT tool. Maybe the collection and processing will be slow, maybe there will be a few more errors than expected, but at least you have a consistent way towards the objectives you have. And if you want to make it efficient, then you implement the tools for supporting those processes and help data collection and maintenance. When we discussed about how you can digitalize data, we mentioned that you can use some of the tools and maybe even somewhat customize them and to implement them in a way that is, let's say, more accommodative to you. You can use ticketing systems for that. Ticketing systems are used by service industries in which there are help desks who receive some of the questions or issues or requests or whatever, and those ticketing systems are used to maintain those lists. Some universities are using the ticketing systems for service provision. We know for sure about OS Ticket, which is an open source ticketing system that is being used by some of the universities. Ticket is basically the question, the request for a service, where this ticket can be also made by a custom form, so it doesn't have to be suggested by default by the system. But you can introduce some more data. Some features supported by OS Ticket that we can easily consider self-explanatory are resource allocation by the help desk, time accounting, priority management, task management, advanced searching and reporting, and finally help desk portal. In this context, open source means at least three important things to you as a promoter of such system use. First, the software license will cost you nothing. The use is free. Second, although the installation will cost you some tech hours, basic setup can be done very fast, in hours, as the installation and use is supported by a large open source community. Third, you can change it. You can re-engineer it to have it as an exact fit to your needs. Let me show you how the basic installation of OS Ticket works.